I am Dr. Renu Thakur, Associate Professor, Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Today we will do module number 7, Ellora painting. The Ellora caves are important in the study of Indian painting as the mural paintings here bring together various stylistic variations from the Vakatak period idiom at Ajanta towards a more linear expression of medieval painting. The module examines the extant paintings at Ellora dating from 8th to 12th centuries, and through their evaluation the evolution of Indian painting from the ancient to medieval period is studied in this module. The Ellora cave represent in Indian art history an interesting attempt at the unification of sensibility in which the various faiths collaborated towards the evolution of distinctive creative idiom in which integration rather than conflict was the basic principle of cultural interaction. Through Ellora caves, we get to see how the process had gradually evolved and expressed itself with the distinctive styles of architecture, sculpture and mural paintings reflecting the influences exercised by the three major religious faiths of India, Buddhism, Hinduism and Jainism. As all the three faiths were indigenous, hostility was replaced by hospitality, reaction was replaced by reciprocity. Within the same framework, permission by the rulers was given to contend for supremacy as the prime religion by way of artistic efforts and missionary zeal. This explains the coexistence of the three religions in a single spot, contending for hegemony but working in a spirit of conciliation. The transitions and transformations of the artistic ethos represented by the caves have been related to the changes in the worldview and the spiritual outlook brought about by the Reformist and the Protestant impulses in Indian religion. The Ellora caves, nothing less than an organic symbol of unity in diversity, underlying Indian culture. Now we will study the history of Ellora caves. Ellora, known as Verul, has been a place of pilgrimage since ancient times. Ellora caves are located about 18 miles from the city of Aurangabad in Chamadari Hills. The 34 caves at Ellora were excavated over a period of 600 years from the 5th century AD to 11th century AD. The Hindus were the first to excavate caves at Ellora. It was probably during the reign of Kalachuris that the work began at Ellora caves 28, 27 and 19, which are modest excavations without any artistic pretensions. Next work began at what is now cave number 29, Dumar Lane, a very ambitious project that resembles the main cave, Elephanta in plan and other essential details, especially the sculptures. Almost simultaneously, caves 20 and 26 were also excavated. But far more exquisite and aesthetically superior is cave number 21, that is Rameshwar cave, which was also taken up at that time. It was towards the close of 6th century that the excavation of the Buddhist cave at Ellora began. Although it is generally presumed that Buddhist caves were the first to be excavated, close analytic studies have revealed that rock cutting activity began in the Hindu caves in the middle of 6th century, and by the 7th century work was underway both in the Hindu and the Buddhist caves. The Buddhist activity, however, came to an end by the close of 7th century, and the 8th century is marked by vigorous Hindu activity in the area. Their grandest edifices at Ellora is cave number 16, that is the Kailash temple, which can be assigned to the later half of the 8th century. Work on the Jain cave started towards the close of the 8th century and continued in full swing in the 19th and 10th centuries. Ellora was thus buzzing with art activity for nearly 4 centuries, circa 550 to 950, and when it came to embellishment with paintings, the activity is said to have extended to the 12th century. In the middle of the 8th century, the power of the early Western Chalukyas came to an end, and the Rashtrakuts under the Danti Durg regained power. Danti Durg was succeeded by his uncle Krishna I, who was a remarkable ruler and was responsible for creating an undoubtedly unique monument in the Deccan, the Kailash temple at Ellora. It was carved out of living rock. The empire left by Krishan was greatly strengthened by successive rulers of military prowess like Dhruv and Govind. It is to these princes that we owe beautiful monuments and certainly the most extraordinary in India. Of the 34 caves at Ellora, 12 are Buddhist, 17 Brahmanical and 5 are Jain. Extending in a linear arrangement, Buddhist shrines and monasteries, cave number 1 to 12 are located at the southernmost end of the site. The Hindu temples, cave number 13 to 29, occupying the central portion, and the Jain temples, cave number 30 to 34, are at the northernmost end. They issue from an abrupt vertical cliff above the horizontal sweep of a natural platform and dominate the northern part of the vast Deccan Plateau. In this huge group, containing the most beautiful pieces of Indian stone sculpture, we have some of the caves painted and the survivals are fewer. Ellora contains all 3 Buddhist, Hindu and Jain paintings. There are minor remnants of paintings in cave numbers 5, 6, 9 and 12, whereas bigger areas have survived in Ganesh Lane, Kailash Indra Sabha cave and in the small cave to the right of Indra Sabha number 31. Ellora painting moved away gradually from Ajanta, stylistically evolving its own idiom, which the art historian called medieval. It is different from the classical Ajanta, Badami and Bagh in the sense that plastic quality of the colors and lines is thin. The smooth curves of the limbs are replaced by acute angles and the figures have wide open eyes and curved lower lips. But these are not the only features that medieval Ellora evolved. As they moved away from the classical Ajanta, Bagh and Badami, the Ellora painters developed pictorial principles of their own to suit their requirements. It seems while the direction of their own to suit their requirements. It seems while the direction of the forms in Ajanta is from depth to surface. Here in Ellora, that is from one side to another, and this is manifested particularly in the treatment of the clouds. Almost all the painted panels of the ceilings of the Kailash, Lankeshwar, Ganesh Lane and Indra Sabha are replete with clouds. The type of the clouds and relation of clouds and figure vary in Ellora, which unlike Ajanta does not offer the spectacle of one unanimous tradition of painting. Here several currents meet, coexist and blend. Despite, however, the contrasting style, their application is of one kind. Clouds, whatever the stylistic variation of their shapes are, the ground which fills the panels and figures are rest on it in different rhythms. Variously conglomerated, these clouds appear to support the flying figures as well as provides them a cloud sphere. As the clouds are found to be adjusted to the straight lines of the frame, much of the compositional arrangement of panels depended on them. In view of this, the figures in the panel are meant for flying, their bodies are slender, their legs are attenuated, but their shoulders are strong like the flying figures in the Kirti Arjun panel at Mahabalipuram. It would appear that while evolving their own principles, the Ellora painters were aware of and borrowed from the ideals of figure representation of the Pallav South. Clouds ubiquitous in Ellora occur in the Ajanta paintings incidentally only, in connection as a rule with the appearance of Devtas. In fact, there they look vaporous. Ellora paintings cover the ceiling and walls of the mandaps and represent not only the iconographic forms but also the lovely floral designs and animals and birds entwining in the patterns. The cave that contains the maximum extant paintings done over an extended period from the late 8th century to the 12th century. In the Kailash cave number 16, paintings occur in front porch of the Rang Mahal. They are covered by 3 successive layers of painting and are now in process of renovation, and it is important that even within one layer variations occur. The oldest must date from the time the temple was built in the second half of the 8th century. The technique is the same as that at Badami, but here the drawing is more important than the modeling. Brahman rhythm grows more and more definite as Buddhist borrowings become less. Then there is an upper or second layer, and then the last or later layer done around the 12th century AD. According to Moti Chandra, there is a representation of gods paying homage to Lord Shiv. Another panel depicts Vishnu and Lakshmi on Garud, which according to Philip Rosen is contemporaneous with the previous painting, whereas Moti Chandra is of the opinion that this was painted later. The figure of Lakshmi Narayan on Garud is also interesting. In this can be noticed the peculiar eyes, pointed nose in the three-quarter view, which later became a distinguished feature of the Western Indian paintings from Gujarat of the 14th-15th century AD. Another interesting painting depicts a Hindu deity riding on a mythical monster, Sardul. That is a composite figure with the head, mane and paws of a lion and the horns of a bull or a buffalo. Interestingly, Yazdani compares the head of the deity favorably in its conception and treatment to the paintings at Ajanta, particularly the Bodhisattva heads. But he is also critical of what he calls the uncouthness of the poses of the accompanying celestials and dancers, and goes on to highlight the attenuation of the limbs and crude clouds, especially in comparison to Ajanta. Another interesting painting is seen on the ceiling of the right side of portico of the Rang Mahal. It represents Shiv dancing the Tandav. Let's see the figure. The attendant musicians seems to have been obliterated, but Shiv himself is well preserved. He has 16 hands. One of his right hand is in Abhay Mudra. One holds a damaru, another holds a sword, another probably a bow. The objects in the other hand are not distinct. He wears crown, big round earrings and 2 large garlands. According to Shivmurti, the Nataraj here is a splendid example of Chalukyan type and has to be compared with the earlier one at Badami. The figure is multi-armed and the dance is in Chatur pose. The anatomy of figure, the details and the ornamentation closely follow that of sculpture, including such minute details as the pattern of the Jat Mukut, the elaboration of decoration and so forth. It is one of the most beautifully preserved panels at Ellora. Let's see figure. Dated to the time of the second layer, in which the move away from the classical tradition is more apparent, is painting of the beautiful elephant amidst a lotus pool in gorgeous color, now partially faded, that is as lively as probably some of other figure drawings. Among the later layer is the depiction of a battle scene on the architrave below the ceiling, which is interesting. The scene shows a number of elephants, horses and men fighting a battle. Horsemen are seen in the act of hurling his spear at horsemen. The footmen are clad in mail and armed with spears and shields. The elephants and the horses are well drawn and look active. All the figures emerge from some depth. The elephants and the horses are well drawn and look active. All the figures emerge from some depth. The elephants are high with a tough modeling and summarily brushed with a contrasting or toned color modeling. Here the style shows a distinct change, and historians suggest the influence of Malwa and of southern Gujarat. Some also relate the liveliness and decorative charm of these panels to 13th century marble friezes in the Jain temples in Western India. A polyvinyl acetate preservation coat on the painted surface applied about 20-25 years ago turned hazy and was replaced by a fresh coat of the preservative. The paint layers is adherent and has bright pigment and cover area of about 50 square feet. The structure at the back of the Rang Mahal with its four corner temples has a large area of paintings on the exterior, mostly in shades of red in floral patterns and in figures. These are considered late paintings of the period Rani Ahilyabai executed on a lime plaster. The pigment layer is now adherent and clean and the paintings are in good state of preservation. Paintings in the other porch of the Rang Mahal are very scanty. In the main hall of the Rang Mahal, the paintings have grievously suffered on account of the hot smoke. Most of the paint surface has flaked and the ceiling is coated with thick layer soot under which here and there painted patches have been retrieved. Yet some excellently painted figures have been uncovered, like that of Nataraj, in which color shades are a little dull, though the pigment layer of the uncovered paintings is quite adherent. The paintings are done on a lime plaster on a priming coat in earth colors inside the Kailashnath temple. As far as paintings are preserved, the share of southern or classical element is small indeed and is restricted to the modeling only of the human figures. The paintings of the ceilings of the veranda of Ganesh Lane, about 300 feet above cave number 29, though covering an area of only about 150 square feet, are fortunately not affected by an outside accretion. The pigments show here in their full saturation in white, green, blue, buff and other colors, and the paint layer and plaster are generally undamaged. Only a slight dusty deposit on the paintings need to be cleaned for securing a bright view of the paint layer, which has some well-known scenes like the Lingodbhav on the east side and the churning of the ocean in the center. These 8th century paintings make an important contribution to the murals of Ellora, with their paint layer and lime plaster very much intact. The colors are in comparatively lighter shades. A good measure of the wall paintings of Ellora occurs in cave number 33, commonly called Indrasabha cave, and to a little extent in cave number 31. These caves are two of a group of 5 Jain shrines on the northern edge of the Ellora scarp. These Jain caves towards the end of the group of caves at Ellora has its entire surface of ceiling and wall covered with paintings with a wealth of detail as evident from Indrasabha cave. These are scenes illustrating Jain texts and decorative patterns with exuberant floral, animal and bird designs. In the Indrasabha, the cave paintings occur on the ceilings and parts of the walls in the chamber attached to the hall on east and the chamber on left of front veranda of ground floor. There are only some remnants here. The ceiling of the main hall was once decorated with painting which have generally flaked away. Yam and his consort riding on a buffalo are the only major divinities fully preserved in the procession in the broad segmental band. Accompanied by his retinue in this painting, the wide open eyes and the thin modeling point to the beginning of stylization. A sizable area in the front veranda of the cave on first floor has 2 layers of paintings as seen from the falling of the upper layer from some patches. There is a group of 4 lying apsaras on the ceilings. The male figures wear beautiful crowns. The female next to them wears a choli and sari and is adorned with a beautiful garland, earrings, bangles and a crown. There is another interesting pair on the ceiling of the Indrasabha. The male wears a close-fitting clothes and the consort wears a sari with a flower design. She wears earrings, a necklace and rings on the toes of her feet. She is shown caressing her lord by entwining him with her arms around his neck. The clouds flying figures, Jain figures extra in these paintings have similarities with the earlier layers in the western porch of Kailash, but are considered of later date. There are also paintings in geometrical designs on the ceilings, and on the right of the entrance there are some other scenes. Indra Sabha, flying Vidyadhars with their concerts against a background of trailing crowd, musical figures and other themes closely follow the earlier Chalukya traditions. A comparison of these Vidyadhar figures with similar ones from the Badami caves of an earlier date would clearly reveal this. The color and the patterns, the composing of one dark against another fair, the Mukt Yajnopavit of the male and the elaborate Dhamma Mila of the female figure, the flying attitude extra are all incomparable. These paintings are all executed on a lime plaster coated with a lime wash ground which adheres well to the rock below. The pigment layer is laid in a finely ground earth colors with blue as ultramarine. A coat of a preservative which is slightly darkened has effectively bound the pigments and prevented their flaking through this preservative would need to be substituted by a transparent layer later. The total painted area is about 200 square feet in the front veranda. On the ceiling of the Garbhagrihi are painted figures of Tirthankars. The paintings in the side chambers in this cave are covered with layer of soot but are otherwise well executed and show some remarkable patterns and figures. A cleaned area has shown some pigments in bright tones in a uniformly laid paint layer which is in a far better condition than the ruined paintings in the Lankeshwar. The entire ceiling of the Lankeshwar was previously painted. The paint layer is charged with hot smoke and only some incoherent patches have survived under thick sooty deposits. Here also only some outlines can be made after removal of the sooty layer. On the gallery on the right side and in the porch at the far end of the gallery, some remains of a painted plaster still exist. These show parts of some figures and other decoration in red, yellow, black and grey colors. A little blue has also survived. These are all very patchy but have been preserved and properly maintained. These are executed on a lime plaster. Restricted to the surface, medieval painting in the Deccan does not only write down the movement which agitates the mind, the body and the hand of the painter, its driving power is allayed by winnowed vestiges of the instantaneousness of the metaphysical direction. They are shown as elements of squareness in the spacing of the figures, and as their setting, an element of squareness inhabits the varied rhythms which transfers the surface of medieval paintings. It makes them paradoxically weighty, staid. According to R.S. Gupte and B.D. Mahajan, the impression one gets as one looks carefully at the paintings of Ellora is their utter lack of originality as also their poor execution. The paintings of Kailash lack the grace of Ajanta. They somehow fail to impress. Only in the Jain caves, some of the old spirit which made Ajanta possible may be noticed. But like the Persians of antiquity, the Jain artists only imitated and did not create anything new. They further conclude their comments with the words of Yazdani, which says, "The figures of Apsaras with dark brown or swarthy complexions floating in the midst of the scarlet crowds of the evening appear with considerable perspective, effect and the grace of their limbs and the charm of their jewellery and the dress, however scanty, are also admirably represented." Jain artists were good copies, and as the spirit of their religion has much in common with that of the Buddhist faith, the figures of the Apsara in the ceilings of the Indra Sabha suggest almost the same beauty of pose, grace of movement and love of decorative details as one notices in the figures of the Apsaras painted in the monasteries of Ajanta. The art of Ellora is, however, purely imitative and does not show any creative power. However, though the painting in Ellora has been rated not high in artistic skill and quality as compared to Ajanta, Technically, they are executed well and with well prepared materials. Chemical conservation of sizable area has greatly improved the condition of paint and plaster, and even under some areas covered with soot, painted panels of good workmanship have been brought out in colors of moderate intensity. These magnificent paintings, which have been a key attraction in Aurangabad of art lovers, historians and tourists from all over the world, have been losing their sheen and glory over the years owing to wear and tear. Various measures are adopted by Archaeological Survey of India to protect them. V.N. Prabhakar, Superintending Archaeologist, Archaeological Survey of India, Aurangabad, informs that many institutions are involved in the restoration work of the Ellora caves, which is currently in progress. The core responsibility has been handed over by the ASI to expert artists, sculptor researchers, photographers such as Prasad Pawar. Prasad came up with the concept of digital restoration for the paintings. Practically, it is not possible and permissible to complete the pictures in the caves, so he started painting the missing patches on his digital canvas, and outcome was wonderful. He developed an interest in the digital restoration of these paintings. In an interview with Times of India newspaper, he said that I was awed by the aesthetic beauty of these timeless paintings, but I was moved by the extent damage that they had undergone over the years, which is also deteriorating their aesthetic value. Since then, it had been a dream as an artist to associate myself in some way with the restoration of these paintings, which I had been pursuing for the last 2 decades. Explaining his perspective, Prasad says, every painting has a story behind it. Due to fading colors, most visitors are unable to comprehend the history behind the works. Restoring these stories with the use of digital canvas is one of my main objectives. Talking about the challenges, he adds, putting together the missing elements is most challenging. It needs a detailed study of the documented history behind the paintings, pigments, patterns and symmetry used in them, which can be gauged from the remnants. Prasad, who plans to exhibit his work on electronic panels after it is complete, says, I want to create something which even time cannot erase. Such work to preserve these paintings is surely proving to be a boon for the generations to come. The Ellora, preserved as an artistic legacy, will continue to inspire and enrich the lives in future. The caves are a sort of orgiastic head-on encounter with all aspects of the human experience. Not only is this cave complex a unique artistic creation and an excellent example of technological exploit, but also with its sanctuaries devoted to Buddhism, Hinduism and Jainism, it illustrates the spirit of tolerance that was the characteristic of ancient India.